Dear colleagues, this is Cambridge University Press webinar called New Materials for Adult Learners from Cambridge University Press. The webinar is conducted by Ludmila Городецкая, that is me. I am Senior Consultant of Cambridge University Press office in Moscow. We begin with the new course called Evolve. And you will see the same template, this pink template of Evolve, all through the presentation. However, some of the slides will be devoted to other materials, not only Evolve, but some other new materials that I draw your attention to. Now, what you see on this first slide is the picture of the 3 levels of the course called Evolve. And you may be slightly disappointed to see that it is American English course for adults. But I assure you that today's British courses published in Cambridge, UK, together with American English courses published in the New York branch of Cambridge University Press, are more or less the same, presenting multiplicity of accents that your students should be familiar with to work and study internationally. So there will be no more American English than in any other course. What else you see on this picture is a symbolism and a symbolic picture of the students photographed from above. This is a group of students working together. Why is it symbolic and why is it repeated throughout the template? Cooperation, collaboration, and communication are 3 very important words in teaching and learning English today. Students work together over coffee. You see some of them are having coffee cups. They are doing a project work together. They are involved in teamwork, both in class and in their free time when they are doing their homework. In the next slide, you see the answer to the question, is it Touchstone rebranded? Because there are a lot of universities who have been working with Touchstone and were expecting one more edition of Touchstone. No, it is not. It is quite a different course, and it is easily proved by a group of different authors, completely new content and completely new features. Courses should develop as young people do. They cannot stay the same for years. Among the authors, you see some names who have probably been elsewhere, heard or seen by you, such as Mark Ibbotson, who came to Russia a few months ago and was a speaker at several events. Then Ben Goldstein, who is coming on the 30th of May and will also be speaking at various events. So if you visit Cambridge University Press Russian website, you will know his program, and if it is either Moscow, if you all live in Moscow, in St. Petersburg or in Kazan, you will be able to attend his workshops. The next picture, or the next slide, shows a kind of a logo. They spoke, we listened. Who is meant? If they spoke, and by they, teachers are meant, students may be passive listeners, and we know such situations from our own practice. If they spoke means students were speaking and we were listening. It is also a kind of a monologue when students prepare their presentations or something they've learned by heart, and we are listening and checking out the mistakes, writing comments on accuracy and on other peculiarities of the student's language. Sometimes they spoke, we listened, refers both. Actions refer to students. Students spoke and students listened. So these are very important questions of how we look at listening and speaking, whether it is a monologue, a dialogue, or a polylogue, and who are active participants. Okay, it takes some time to change the slide. The speaking paradox. What's a paradox? The paradox is that on the one hand, students realize that speaking is one of the most important skills in their future education and profession. On the other hand, speaking is less easy to deal with if we mean self-training. For example, as you see in the next slide, feeling disengaged. This is exactly the situation when either a teacher is speaking all the way through or students make monologue presentations one after another and other students feel disengaged. So it is difficult to get involved in speaking, though students realize how important it is. Then, finding time and place to practice is another feature of the speaking paradox. If you can read, and you can even do some listening as you see earphones in the students' ears, they can drill grammar and vocabulary, they can read some text and do some exercises and activities, they can even write. However, listening is can hardly be practiced in public places like this. Teachers don't have time to devote it to individual students to chat with them in English. Of course, in Western universities, it is a tradition for teachers to have office hours where students can come to their offices and discuss their individual matters. It is not necessarily speaking, and these hours are not meant for practicing speaking with individual students. So the course called Evolve, which is now appearing, has a logo. You see it at the bottom on the left. Speaking matters. Speaking matters can be understood as noun matters, speaking matters, вопросы устной речи, or it can be interpreted as speaking is what matters. Speaking matters is a verb. And what is particularly new in this course, even unique, is student-generated content. What is student-generated content? Let's see. In this slide, you see peer models and real student-generated content. In fact, you don't see the content, of course. The content is spread all over the books. But there have been a lot of students, in fact, hundreds of students, more than 1,000 students, interviewed all over the world. They took part in the so-called speaking competition. And they suggested topics that would interest them very much in their English courses. These are students from different countries: Brazil, Peru, Mexico, South Korea, and many other countries. Students volunteered to take part in this contest, and those who were particularly interested, who provided the most revolutionary responses, were included in the recordings of the course, and they also take part in video pieces, video fragments of the course. However, a lot of the topics have been selected from the students' choice and used by the authors to build their materials on, to make speaking more involving, more motivating for another generation. After all, we will never become students again, and we cannot know what interests them, what sparks their inspiration. see here is the content. Well, it's about the same that I have said, how real students affected the choice of the content. Now we will have a unit tool. We will look at how the unit of the course is organized. The unit usually begins with an absolutely unique picture. If you look carefully at this picture, there are a lot of people making something together. It's like a circus, like a public event or a festival, and it illustrates the word connections. The beginning of the unit is a typical warm-up, common warm-up, where students start speaking on the topic of the unit, and there are some tips for them to use, like what types of connections are you engaged in? Family connections, work connections, maybe educational connections, maybe some connections with your friends, with your leisure time partners. So they start thinking about human connections they are engaged in. Then what follows this first introductory warm-up page are lessons 1 and 2. So you see that unit is a big structure, while lessons make up a unit. There are several lessons in a unit. They are united by a topic, but they are divided by their functions and objectives. Lessons 1 and 2 are devoted to the development of major skills, particularly based on grammar and vocabulary. So what teachers love so much here in Russia will be fully reflected in the first 2 lessons, lessons 1 and lesson 2. There will be vocabulary necessary for the level. Remember, if there are 6 levels, there will be a very smart division of the material into these levels, quite manageable. However, it is not necessary to master all the levels from beginning to the end, because students come to universities prepared to a certain degree, and there may be some placement test that will show what level you have to begin with. I wanted to draw your attention to this page illustrating the health problems. Health problems and various types of pains and aches, like toothache, stomach ache, back pain, headache. They are illustrated by the pictures, but they're usually perceived by students as very boring. Students do not care about their health as much as adult people do. But according to students' recommendations, those students who participated in the research, the whole content of this unit was shown through their communication with parents. Parents who send their children to universities in other cities or even in other countries, they are very much concerned about their students' health, so that the dialogues and written pieces will be the concerns of parents and how students deal with them. Okay, something has interfered. Somebody has interfered into my slide, but I will escape it. Okay, the next slide. You see the activity here also related to the same lesson or group of lessons 1 and 2. Very often the activities are placed at the end of the book, so it makes the book very flexible. If there's no extra time, teachers do not go beyond the pages of the unit. However, if there's time, they may go to the recommended page at the back of the book and do some grammar activities or exercises. And I want to draw your attention to the means of expressing modality. When we hear the word modality, we immediately think about the verbs like may, maybe, might. However, the adverbs such as probably, possibly, even the future auxiliaries such as will or won't, they are also used for expressing modality, and the students are asked to make 3 predictions using the words in the box here. Now, mobile phone activities for the classroom. Again, according to the research, students all over the world have shown excessive interest, excessive only from our adult viewpoint, to excessive interest in the use of phones in the classroom. Yes, indeed, there may be some 5 minutes devoted to various activities which may be done with the help of iPhones, with the help of the internet through the telephones, like, for example, find very quickly the meaning of some new words or the answer to a certain question. And also to discuss the meaning of mobile phones and mobile communication in our life. And in the pictures here on the screen, you see people of different generations, and it is interesting that on the one hand, we cannot live without mobile phones, particularly younger people, or parents may get connected to their beloved children via mobile telephones. On the other hand, the attitude to this new form of communication is different. However, the book has special signs which show the teacher and the students that at this moment they can use their mobiles, and it is not a program that is downloaded into their mobiles. It is just for expanding their information needed for the classroom. Here we deal with lesson 3, and I said lessons A and B are mostly about grammar, vocabulary, and some necessary activities with grammar and vocabulary according to the topic. Lesson 3 is called functional lesson. Functional lesson, or everyday English, functional English, are all the words that show a great level of importance of communication. And this communication can occur not only at the university, not only in joint projects that students are doing, or having rest together in the students' lounge, as you see again in this picture from above, but they can deal with various sides of social life, with people of various professions, going to a doctor, going to a library, going to a gym, in this case going to eat somewhere. And this young girl, student, is eating in a restaurant. And again, we may say, yes, eating and food are always included in certain levels of today's teaching materials. You can't avoid them. Yes, but according to the research, students have recommended to introduce an interesting shift or twist to the topic. And this shift or twist is connected with allergies. This lady, this young woman here, has seafood allergy. And when she's discussing the menu with the waiter recommends her some foods. And she's asking about these meals, what is in them? And when she finds out that there's some seafood or there are some sea products in the meals recommended to her, she explained that she cannot have them. So in fact, even a simple talk in lower levels about the menu and your choices is in fact a piece of negotiations. I personally do have to explain to waiters all over the world, including English-speaking countries, that I have milk allergy or allergy for dairy products. And I have to insist on knowing what is in the food, because otherwise I will have a very serious food poisoning. So a lot of people in the world seem to be allergic today to many agents, including food. And this is again a very interesting shift which allows students to learn more about the world, to learn more about other people, apart from learning necessary vocabulary and an elegant dialogue which everyone needs to be able to reproduce in a similar situation. In the next slide, lesson 3 is continued. What is important to see here, I'm not expecting you to read the exercises in small printing, but what is called real-world strategy. Real-world strategy. This is something which is made a special point in this book. Because, you know, what they recommend is when you are a passive listener, you're talking to someone and the person is taking an active role in talking about something, like telling you about the latest events in his life. What is the common mistake of lots of students all over the world, including Russian students, which cannot be described neither either in terms of grammar or in terms of vocabulary? It is a strategic mistake. We keep silent. We think that being silent, we support a speaker. We show our interest. On the contrary, we have to say something like, is it really? Are you really? Oh, really? Wow, super, or something like that, just to support communication and to show your interest. It's surprising. Oh, do you? Did you? Whatever is appropriate, little words have to be produced by an active listener. Active listening is attracting more and more attention of book writers today. In this slide, you see lesson 4 of the same unit. You remember that the general title of the unit was Connections. So now lesson 4, you see a funny subtitle, Impossible Foods. Impossible Foods, including Impossible Hamburger. Impossible Foods is the name of a restaurant. Somebody quite adventuristic and business-minded opened this restaurant, and suddenly it gained a lot of success. And people, particularly young people, wanted to experiment with the ingredients which are not usually combined in traditional foods. So what students do here, they read the text about this organization, Impossible Foods, and then they read a chat with impressions of other people, with their opinions, and then they start adding their own ideas about this type of fashion, whether it is good or bad. And it is always good, according to critical thinking tradition, which is now actively used by book writers, not necessarily to criticize anything that appears new and unusual, but being able to compare positive and negative sides of everything. Because, you know, every fashion may bring about both pluses and minuses, both advantages and disadvantages in a human life. And it ends, this page ends up with laboratory. Students write about the laboratory that produces unusual ingredients. In fact, this is not just fun. The topic, it is connected with the lack of food on the earth, with the necessity probably faced by some countries even nowadays, and we may be facing in a few years, of producing foods, because the number of crops and the number of farm animals cannot satisfy the growing population of the earth. So on the one hand, it is fun, appropriate for students to spark their interest, suggested by the students during the research. On the other hand, it grows beyond into a serious international problem, which academic students, students at the universities, have to be able to deal with. Lesson 5 in the same unit is always time to speak. Time to speak is something which is not just a topic learned by heart or repeated from the book. It is always based on a problem. So on the page illustrating this part of the unit here, you see 3 pictures. A disabled person trying to climb up a long staircase in a wheelchair, then a young mother with children also fighting with the staircase she has to climb, and a person on the beach who is sitting there with his pet, or maybe even 2 pets, and a sign here showing no pets on the beach, where the picture of the dog is crossed out. We are familiar with such places where pets are not allowed. And the question here is, where should a person go with his pets? So all these questions have no one perfect answer. They set questions, and the students are reading something related to the situations. They discuss these particular situations, what can be done, what should be done, but they also think about their personal experience. So every element of information is personalized, and they are asked to give similar examples, not necessarily about disabled people or beaches, but what can be socially difficult for some people in their countries or in their cities where they live, and what should be done. So the idea here goes beyond just stating the problem or studying the problem. It is always turned into solving a problem. So students have to be able to propose solutions, and then discuss these solutions as more or less effective according to other members of the group, other classmates or group mates. Here, a page showing progress check. It is taken from another unit, because you see that the topics do not coincide here. However, you know, I have not seen the whole book of this level, so I may be mistaken. And the progress check comes from the same unit, but another subtopic of it. The subtopic here is fashion accessories. And it is about creating an image, about being fashionable, about wearing something and not wearing something else. So this is something that was learned in the unit, which makes me suspicious about the number of the unit. You see, this is unit number 9. Well, when we began with connections, it was number 4, so it comes from one of the following units. It doesn't matter. The principle is that the progress is checked in practically all British published materials now, when they are set as objectives at the beginning on the introductory page, and then students do self-reflection, which is very important. Now these are can-do statements similar to those of Common European Framework of Reference, or to those which are important for Cambridge exams. And they are very concrete. They refer to the material covered in the unit. But unlike other materials, there is a new and very important right-hand side that has appeared in Evolve. It is called Проводит. When you claim, tick a box, like, now I can use words for fashion accessories. Okay, we believe you, but you have to write 2 accessories you wear on your feet, 2 accessories you wear around your neck, and 5 other accessories. When you can do it, yes, it is you persuade yourself and you convince your teacher that yes, indeed, you have mastered this material. And this happens with every can-do statement on the list. Okay, I'm waiting for the next slide to appear, and it doesn't seem to want to appear. Just a moment, we'll do it other way around. I'm sorry about that. That is a pause caused by some technical problems. No, that's not what I wanted to. Yes, that's what I wanted to go to. Corpus-informed features of the course are very common in Cambridge University Press materials, because Cambridge University Press is known for having and running and supporting and enlarging the largest in the world computer corpus of the English language. It is first international corpus of English, 2 billion or more word entries in all their contexts, but it is also Cambridge Learner corpus, which comes from Cambridge exams, analyzed and classified into common errors. And in this book, 3 features of the corpus information are used. It is accuracy check, register check, and insider English. Accuracy is correctness. It can be connected with spelling, vocabulary, grammar, in oral interactions, of course, pronunciation, but accuracy is not enough. What is important and what we often disregard as teachers is register correctness. What is register correctness? It is when you speak to a professor, you use a different register or style than speaking with a friend. When you speak to your mom or you write to your mom, your style is different from your SMS sent to a friend. So register, in Russian very often called стиль, depends on the context of communication and who you are addressing. And it can be divided into formal, informal, and something in between called semi-formal or neutral. So what is recommended in the box on the right is that first, when you're expressing your opinion, you use the words I think, if you ask me, for me, which is an important prerequisite of sounding modest. Yes, you are confident in what you are saying, but you are not monopolizing the opinion. That is why these softeners called hedges are recommended. But if you are writing on the same topics or on other topics, you are writing an essay, for example, meant for your professor, then the simplest elements of expressing opinion turn into more formal ones, such as from my point of view, it seems to me that don't think that they are necessary, and students are often corrected on that. And register check is something which is implanted in their heads through various numerous repetition from unit to unit. And insider English is one more new feature which you can hardly find in any other materials. What is insider English? You can guess from the meaning of the word insider. It is English that sounds more authentic than that used by foreigners. In some cases, it is very difficult to make our language authentic. We are not supposed to use slang, we are not supposed to use taboo words or very specific use language which gets out of date every 5 years. So that when our students go to study abroad, they have to stick to neutral tone or semi-formal style. However, insider English is sometimes very easy to reach. For example, getting rid of the word understand. Russian students, and probably not only Russian students, are notorious for overusing the word understand. Like, for example, chatting with someone, they say, understand? Understand with a rising tone. Ну что, понял? Or, yes, I understand. Yes, I understand. Instead of understand, other forms more common in the authentic speech of native speakers can be recommended, such as get. Yes, I've got what you mean. Do you get what I'm saying? Or, I see what you mean. There are some simpler verbs recommended which are not so difficult, but they make our speech more natural. In the next slide, there is a unit structure for all the units is summarized. We've discussed it already, and the printing is very small. So I repeat it only in the form of a summary. First 2 lessons, grammar and vocabulary, some listening, pronunciation, basic skills. Then lesson 3, following these 2 first lessons, functional language or everyday English, dialogues, conversations, polylogs. Then lesson 4, it is usually completed by writing. However, writing will not appear from the blue. There are some reading and listening activities, after which students are asked to write their own piece based on what they've heard or what they've read. And finally, lesson 5 is speaking, which is considered to be one of the most important elements of real-life communication, collaboration, and cooperation in education and profession. What you now see is a completely different feature from the mobile phone that we saw on one of the slides, where 5 minutes are allowed just for students to take out their mobiles and look for some information in new words. This is a special feature of the course called Practice Extra, and it should be, if it is optional, but if you choose it, then the whole group or individual student, if you use the course with individual students, have to download this Practice Extra program into their mobile devices. They are mobile friendly, which means what? They can be easily used anywhere. Even if you have a 20-minute ride on the bus, 10-minute ride in the underground, or you are waiting for someone, or you are having a snack in a student canteen, you can take it out and do some bite-sized activities which are related to the unit and which are in fact your homework activities for each lesson and skill. Here, this feature relates to professional development of teachers. And of course, it is contained, this facility is included in the teacher's book or teacher's edition. A lot of pages are covered with boxes like that, with the bluish background on them and with the greenish background under the title, Teacher Development Introduction. This is only introduction. However, there are a lot of tips and recommendations for teachers. How to improve their own English, because it's not a secret that many teachers suffer from some inconfidence dealing with the most advanced students or very confident students who may not be so advanced, but who traveled, unlike older generation, who use chats and the internet devices, so they suppose their English is much better. And teachers should not lag behind. Teachers should always be several steps ahead. For that purpose, they are given a chance to upgrade their professional qualification while teaching with Evolve, not doing anything special, not devoting any special time to teacher training, which they just don't have in their disposal. Integrated teacher development themes are numerous, in fact. This is a whole page of bluish background, which means this is a part of the teacher's book devoted to a certain unit, which is solely for the teachers. It is how to teach and develop your own speaking skills. Of course, you are obsessed with the students' speaking skills because this is what they expect from you and from the course book. However, you may develop your own speaking skills doing something for students and with students. Then support in the classroom and learner engagement. This is a more psychological topic about how to motivate students and how to draw their attention, how to wake them up sometimes, how to sparkle their interest. And language acquisition. Language acquisition, unlike language learning, is an interesting and very revolutionary topic which has been on for several decades now. But here in Russia, we are doing more in terms of language teaching and learning, while language acquisition happens in a more natural environment, which is hard to create in class, but it is quite possible thanks to the new thinking, new approaches to teaching developed by our colleagues, not necessarily us if we are practicing teachers. We do not necessarily write teaching materials. Components of Evolve available for each of the 6 levels of Evolve are Student's Book with Practice Extra, and I've said that Practice Extra is a program for devices, for iPads and iPhones. Workbook with audio, class audio, video resource book with DVD, they go together. Presentation Plus, classroom software, and Teacher's Edition with test generator. So what is important about the last 2 components? Presentation Plus is a DVD which contains all the components of a certain level of the course. Teachers, student books, workbook, audio, video, tests, everything. Of course, it is a more expensive component than just a student book, but it can be used for the whole class and for the whole school. Teachers can pass it, hand it to each other after a class, because it is installed just as any simple disk into your computer, and then it is shown on the screen with the help of sound amplifiers so that every unit and every lesson within the unit become alive. This is a very convenient element which most teachers either don't know about or they seldom use. I recommend it very much, whatever course book from Cambridge you are using. Teacher's edition, it is something we always need. Even with lower levels, we prefer to have the answers, the scripts, and the recommendations of how to deal with mixed ability classes. But test generator makes this facility more effective so that you can generate tests according to the needs, whether you need to take 15 minutes of your class time or 30 minutes of your class time, whether you need to have 15 questions purely on grammar, or you have to have more questions both on grammar, vocabulary, and functional language. So this is a very convenient component which makes teachers' life much easier, because we usually look for tests elsewhere. We find good tests, but they do not necessarily correspond to the course we are using. These are questions, true and false quiz questions about what you've just listened to. Evolve is a new edition of Touchstone. Think, I will show you the answers in a minute. We consulted 1,000 students to gather ideas for the content of Evolve. Evolve includes corpus-informed features. Evolve doesn't have an online workbook, and Evolve is hosted on the CLMS. So some of the answers were discussed, some of them were not, but the first two questions have or statements are false, the next two are true, and the last one is false. Okay, we will get back to some of the questions later on, and you will probably have a bit of a surprise. Now this slide shows something which I wanted to discuss with you, but it is virtually impossible in the time given. So there are academic titles which Cambridge produces in great numbers. Top 10 is only a little fraction of academic English. I'm not speaking of sciences. I'm speaking of academic English of a more general or of a more concrete character, which either follows Evolve as a general English course or is combined with it at the university. If you are teaching in a language center or private language school, often called kursy английского языка in Russian, then of course you will have Evolve as a highly communicative course, and that will be enough. However, if you are teaching at the university, you have to think about introducing scientific language or academic English as it is called. And one of the elements of this academic approach can be seen even in grammar. Grammar and Beyond, that has come out in the second edition, is the grammar of academic English. Of course, it can be used with any 10 or 11 graders at school, even 9 graders at school, 8 graders at school, if they are mature enough, because the examples given to illustrate grammar points are those from natural world, social world, various interesting topics of technologies, but grammar is grammar. You can teach grammar using different lexical material, so I recommend you this very much as a highly effective grammar material related to academic English. Then there is a new course called Prism, and it is basically about reading, starting from intro very low level, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, coming from A1 to C1, as the heading says. So academic does not necessarily mean very serious topics of genetics or space research. They may be general facts about the world, nature around us, history, ethnography, anthropology, technology. So all this is a good supplement to evolve, which is more of a general English material. Then another fantastic book is called Unlock. If you are familiar with it, you will be surprised that it now contains the 5th level. The 5th level is advanced. The one on the right is 5th, advanced. So it starts with very low kind of basic or foundation level, though all the levels, even the lowest ones, are academic, and you see it in the pictures. The pictures are fantastic. The videos in the 2nd edition of Unlock are completely new. There's more element of technology introduced in Unlock. Then what else? It is a split edition. You see 2 rows of books. They are all student books. Though there are teachers' manuals, of course, there are no workbooks. But the first row is reading, writing, and critical thinking. The second row is listening, speaking, and critical thinking. So that if you need more listening and speaking, you choose one part of the course, one half of the course. If you need more reading and writing, you choose another half of the course. If you have plenty of time, you choose both, or you do them one after another. This is called light academic, which means it is not for very serious, very advanced students of sciences. It can be used at school, and it can be used within the first years of the university. And just to illustrate the new advanced level, number 5 of Unlock, this is all about Unlock, though as I said at the beginning, the template is that of Evolve, but this is quite a different course which complements Evolve, or follows Evolve if you wish. So what is the content list of the level 5 advanced? Conservation, design, privacy, business, psychology, careers, health science, collaboration, technology, and language. So you see, even from the choice of the topics, that it is multifaceted, multifunctional, multi-topical course, which does not allow to major in and specialize in a very narrow discipline, but broadens the horizons of students into the world around and provides a lot of serious adult academic vocabulary and critical thinking. Critical thinking are the key words here. Now, mindset for IELTS. How does this appear in our presentation? Very simply, if you study at the university or your students learn some general English and then necessarily get specialized more academically, they will have to prove it to external or internal bodies. If they want to go on exchange programs, or if they want to get MA, MS, MBA from any foreign university, not only in Europe or Britain, but also in the United States, they have to take an exam in academic English. IELTS has both academic English and general training module. Of course, students who go to study abroad, they take IELTS academic module or TOEFL. TOEFL is losing popularity, I may say, though Cambridge has produced a very good book, which we are still proud of, called Cambridge Guide for TOEFL Test. But a lot of American universities are now accepting IELTS because it is more familiar in its formats to European, Australian, and even Latin American students. Now, mindset for IELTS is not so new. The levels foundation 1 and 2 have existed for a couple of years probably, but level 3 appeared later, and it brings students to the desired level 7.5. No coursebook will promise higher than 7.5 to any individual student, because it depends on the student's previous familiarity with English and the general command of English. It depends on student's nervous system during an exam, and it also depends on sheer luck, because you may get a text and a listening material connected with your specialization at the university, or you may get something completely alien. It is very accidental that you get this or another topic in IELTS exam. You don't choose. Okay? What is unusual here is foundation level. Foundation level is also like an unlock, the previous academic course which I was showing, which does not prepare for an exam. Now, the trend is that academic English materials, including IELTS exam materials, start very lowly with foundation level, because young people today have no time to go in general English up to advanced or even up to intermediate and then prepare for IELTS. They do two things at once: study general English and prepare for IELTS. Here you see this triangle of learning strategies, exam practice, and skills practice. This is what Mindset for IELTS offers. These three components, they are not published separately. They are intertwined in every unit, but teachers may become more flexible by choosing and putting more focus on either general learning strategies or skills, general skills like speaking, reading, writing, listening, or exam practice, depending on what the student or a group of students needs and how fast. So it can be customized or adapted to the needs of individual students or individual groups. So there are core topics and skills. There are online skills modules within the book, so there is an individual code hiding inside the cover, the front cover of the book. There are academic study skills. There are specific modules for first language or mother tongue of some of the students. Unfortunately, it is not yet for Russians. It is for Chinese and Arab students whose languages are particularly different from English because they are not Indo-European, though statistically they provide a lot of IELTS candidates in the world. And what is particularly amazing is an online practice, a system of online practice tests called Test Bank, which is also given to every user of the student book under the silver lining, silver band, which is scratched, and there's a code hiding under it, individual code, which gives an individual student an individual access to 4 full-fledged IELTS exams that are done online. And I will quickly show you the 3 examples of what the book looks inside, with a sheer idea of finding the difference from the previous IELTS preparation materials you are familiar with. These are levels 1 and 2 mindset, which means 5.5 to 6.5 band score. One example, then the next example, and one more example. So what unites them is obviously the topic related to the living world. What does it prove? It proves that IELTS goes younger It doesn't only go lower in level, demanding foundation level, but it also goes younger, because young students are not so brainy, are not so serious as graduate students who are already looking for PhD degrees. But they just want to participate in various exchange programs of their Russian universities, run some of the programs in English. And they want to take IELTS earlier in their lives, though IELTS is only 2 years valid, but they may need IELTS sooner than later. That is why the material has got this fresh look and this young, optimistic look. The activities look easy, but they are not easy. They correspond to the levels proclaimed by the book. There are some bullets and there are some tips in Mindset for IELTS that help students study individually, self-study, organize their self-study. But even if they are taught by a teacher, still there are some important points depicted as bullets or tips that help them overcome common difficulties, common pitfalls. And then some features of Mindset for IELTS and benefits of these features, like, for example, topics-based units based on topics. But inside the units, they are organized by skills. This gives teachers and students genuine flexibility. 4 levels, important to improve your English step by step, not just at once. You can't jump to the level, to the band score 7.5 within one period of study. Usually you need more. Then other features are discussed here. You may read them on the screen. They are quite easily read. And corpus-informed errors are good for students to know what mistakes they have to overcome or avoid. Then, I'm skipping this because it is just a summary of Mindset for IELTS, which we discussed quite thoroughly. There is an e-book. The only thing which I didn't say is that there is an e-book for all levels. And finally, there are 4 questions for you to answer in the chat box. You can only answer 1 question each. You choose, I specially provided all the 4 questions on one slide. You choose the one that seems to be easier for you to answer and write your answer in the chat box. There will be prizes provided, 2 books of Evolve, student books of 2 different levels, provided by Britannia and Cambridge Resource Centre of Britannia. And there will be 2 certificates with codes for online professional training in Cambridge. It's not Moscow office, but Cambridge, UK, that develops professional training courses, and you get there individually using the codes. You will receive them after your answers have been processed and checked by Britannia staff. So, I'm keeping this page open for you because I see there might have been some problems with the sound, right? For that purpose, when you write that the sound has been restored, I will repeat the task. Okay? I will repeat the task. The task is an additional bonus for you if you answer one of the questions correctly. So, the questions about the webinar, about Evolve, 3 questions about Evolve, and 1 last question about mindset for IELTS. They only have answers yes or no. And I also see that some of you heard the task very correctly and timely, and you already provide your answers, giving the number of the question and the word yes or no, which is the answer to this question. However, as I already said, only 1 answer from a person is accepted, and the staff of Britannia ELT, who have kindly organized this webinar for Cambridge University Press and me as the speaker, they will see whether the answers are correct or not, and who was the first to answer this or another question. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you all good. From Cambridge University Press, Людмила Городецкая, your speaker today. Thank you.